John Dancy is Chief Information Officer for Perspecta. He's a former Senior Vice President for CSRA and Director for Strategic Initiatives at CSC. He has his degrees from James Madison and Queen's University. Great to meet you. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks a lot.
Sure thing. Thank you.
So I think unintentionally I've written a pretty decent summary of what you've heard today. You know, I'm here to try and give you a practitioner's view of all these things we've been talking about. You know, Larry mentioned we went through a pretty incredible journey spinning out of CSC, same day transaction, buying another company and having to create an IT capability in about 5 months from nothing. So I've got a few scars on my back. For what it's worth, the gray in my beard, I started working as an intern at the Senate Computing Center back when it was in the garage of 400 North Capitol. So been in IT for a while. What I'd say is you might be surprised to know that I spend all my day thinking about debt. But I don't think about monetary debt, I think about technical debt all the time. Technical debt was a term coined by a guy named Ward Cunningham back in the software development days, and it's a way he was trying to describe the cumulative effect of bad decisions where you're delaying the perfect answer for something that's the expedient answer. I always like to think of it as kind of the Wimpy problem. You know, the Popeye character was always happy to pay for Hamburger Tuesday for a hamburger today. You know, and that's a lot of times you build up technical debt by making those trade-off decisions where perhaps you want to delay maintenance. I think we heard about delaying maintenance and its impact in favor of using dollars for software development or some feature, or just not doing routine maintenance because you have pressure to deliver on a schedule, or any of those number of things where you're making trade-off decision after trade-off decision, and those problems begin to compound just like interest. Ultimately, you end up with bad architectures, inflexible interfaces, and all these things that just continue to build on forcing you into a trade-off decision again and again and again, to the point where you're almost crushed by the weight of the cumulative effect of those decisions. I guess what I would say is I'm living proof that there's never been a better time in this world right now to be buying down that sort of technical debt. What we did at CSRA and what I'm doing at Perspecta today, where we're bringing together 3 companies, I think that there are 3, well-established principles or practices that come into play as you're working through buying down that debt. And I'd summarize them as leadership. I want to talk about methodology. I want to talk about software-defined everything. So from a leadership perspective, you have to start with culture. You need to build a culture that embraces innovation and embraces change, that works through setting up objectives and asking teams to solve objectives versus giving point tasking. You need to work through objectives, so you give teams the flexibility to use all the creativity and knowledge that they have in order to deliver the outcomes that you're looking for. But that leads right into the whole idea of risk tolerance and your attitude and the leadership's attitude and the organization's attitude towards risk. And you need to figure out how to let your teams take smart risks, but then ideally break those risks down into small manageable chunks where success or failure is identified quickly, the impacts of success are immediate, and the impacts of failure are minimized, and they're celebrated as an opportunity to learn and improve and grow. And then finally, engagement. I think teams want to know, it's one thing to talk culture, it's one thing to talk about risk tolerance, it's another thing to walk the talk every day. And teams want to know that their leaders are going to stay true to their vision and what they've lined out. That means staying involved, asking questions. Working for Larry, one of the things he told me as we stood up CSRA is, I want cybersecurity to be a hallmark of this company. To that end, and to my chagrin, he took a class on cybersecurity. He texted me, it felt like about every 15 minutes with a question from the class. Thankfully, I had the answers, but they came in fast and furious enough that I stopped myself a couple of times from walking down the hall to the men's room and throwing my phone in the toilet just to make sure it legitimately didn't work. But in all seriousness, he backed up what he had to say. He said, I want cyber to be a hallmark, I'm going to take a class, I'm going to ask questions, and I want to know that we're good there. So shifting to methodology, I don't want to go through Agile all over again. There are numerous named frameworks that any of us know about and can implement. But what I will say is any Agile methodology is the key to enabling innovation and a transformation mindset. Doing so encourages cross-functional alignment, stakeholder engagement, and it helps drive down risk through continuous integration and continuous delivery. To enable stakeholder management, I strongly encourage, you've heard a couple times about technology business management, understanding your costs. I strongly encourage anyone who hasn't done that to get smart on the process and the procedure and the way of thinking about those and implement it. For me, what it's done is it's changed my conversations with my stakeholders from one of why does IT cost so much to a conversation around value and investment, and where we can jointly participate in making decisions about how we're going to move forward as a team. The importance of this area, if you're not familiar with it, there is a thing called the Tpm Council. That Tpm Council now has over 5,800 members in it, and they're big enough that their conferences are in Vegas, right? So it's been around for a while, and it's a great practice, and it's a great way to engage your stakeholders in shared success and shared outcomes. And then finally, software-defined everything. I think the shift from the physical confines of infrastructure and data centers to the virtual world enables an innovation culture, and it enables Agile methodologies. Technology's advanced to the point that virtual servers, virtual storage, software-defined networks, software-defined data centers are mature. They're no longer experimental. You know, when I first moved my first workload to AWS in 2015, I felt like an absolute pioneer. Now, if I'm not moving workloads to AWS or to the cloud, I'm way behind. And then finally, moving to the software-defined everything kind of a world really changes your relationship and mindset towards technology investments. You no longer have to worry about procurement cycles, fixed assets, stranded capacity, and what you're going to do with that depreciation and CapEx charge. You know, when I took my first AWS Cloud Certification training course, I think in one day I happily created and destroyed more servers than Godzilla did buildings in every movie you've ever seen. It just, you no longer have to think about a server. You know, it's not a pet. It's not something you're going to take care of, right? You just, you use it when you're done with it, you throw it away. Now, there's lots of architectural principles and frameworks that are well beyond the scope of my talk today, but there's a lot underlying, right? A simple move to a virtual kind of environment that I'd love to talk with you about some other time, but you know, it's vital, I think, to make the move. So how does all this get back to technical debt? Well, for me, it changes the sources of your technical debt. You change the trade-off decisions that you're making. Rather than making decisions about the physical limitations of your fixed assets and inflexible architectures, you're freed up to make decisions around mission priorities and features and functionality. I mean, make no mistake, this kind of a transformation and this kind of a shift is hard. It takes leadership, it takes guts, and it takes determination to see it through. But the payoff's worth it. I could not have achieved the results I did at CSRA or what I'm doing at Perspecta today without implementing these changes. So I'd encourage you all, if you haven't taken the first step, to start and take that first step. Just get going in the right general direction. You're going to get there. And if you're already on that journey, don't lose sight, don't lose faith. Keep it up and keep up the good fight. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up our program today. We appreciate everybody's time and attention in this. Larry, it was good to see you, and congratulations on your good fight all the way across this sector over the last 10 or 20 years. Alan, thank you for coming out, and Ken especially, thank you for all your time, and we appreciate you giving your perspective. Most of you have met John Chiquiti of the Lexington staff who organized this event. John, thank you very much. And Dan Garay, most of you know Dan from the Lexington staff, does a lot of our writing and blogging on IT and cyber work. So thank you also for that, Dan. We'll keep you posted on our upcoming IT activities. We welcome any ideas you have on what Lexington should be doing in the future. We will be posting a number of the presentations today with the author's permission on our website within a few days. And we will keep in touch, and I hope everybody has a good weekend. Elizabeth, thank you very much for what you did to help organize this.